Well, I actually would put a different a response on error. I think error is a natural part of all journalism.
But actually, the viewership of the CBC is cut in half since you took leadership in 2018. It's come down by half. So it's interesting to me that you're giving bonuses or performance awards when, in fact, the CBC is performing the poorest it's ever performed.
Wow, so the speed with which you correct your errors is the way that you measure performance at the CBC. Okay.
That trust is down. Trust is down across the entire media section, and it also affects politicians. It also affects
when
all
you
of
misrepresent the truth, it does affect the politicians.
Excuse me. Today, we're meeting with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation to talk about job cuts announced by CBC Radio-Canada. Witnesses today are Catherine Tait, President and CEO.
Ms. Tait, we're here to talk about job cuts and bonuses, or you prefer to call them performance awards. And so my first question for you is, you've had 2 months to think on it. Of course, you were asked during an interview on national news, in fact, the CBC National, you were asked whether or not bonuses would be considered for executives, and you said it wasn't ruled out, essentially. And so having 2 months to think about it, have you come to a conclusion? Will there be bonuses for the executives within CBC?
Thank you for the question. I just want to clarify the reality of the obligations of the public broadcaster. Of course, we have the privilege of a very, very generous parliamentary allocation, which, by the way, has not substantially increased in over 30 years. And during that time, we have added to traditional and radio, traditional television and radio, with digital services on all platforms. So we're operating with the same budget that we had 30 years ago. And where we get the same pressure as our colleagues in the private sector is from, in fact, the third of our budget that we earn in commercial revenues, which are absolutely vulnerable to the vagaries of the market. And that's the place where we have challenges.
Ms. Tait, in the interest of time, could you please answer my second question? My question, there wasn't actually two, there's just one. Mm-hmm. Perfect. If you could answer it, thank you.
So to the question of performance pay, as I have said in my remarks, the performance pay is a critical part of total compensation.
My question was just whether or not you would be giving it. Will you be giving bonuses to executives?
My response to that question is to say that we have a process, a rigorous process. It is not my decision to award performance pay. It is, in fact, the decision of the board of directors, and that decision comes at the end of the fiscal year.
Based on the metrics that are used then, last year, you gave out $16 million in taxpayer-funded bonuses to the staff. That was an average of $14,000 to staff members at the CBC. Most Canadians don't even see half of that in a bonus, not even a quarter of that in a yearly bonus. $14,000 was the average amount that was given to CBC staff. What were the metrics that were used in order to determine that bonus amount?
So again, the KPIs are published, and they are very clearly have to do with performance of the service. For example, digital reach. For example, engagement with news in the regions. For example, performance on engagement with kids and children. All of those are published very clearly in our annual report. And I actually want to, if I may I ask? I think your number is wrong. If I want to correct the record,
I would just highlight for you that it's interesting to me because you're saying that these are the metrics, but actually the viewership of the CBC is cut in half since you took leadership in 2018. It's come down by half. So it's interesting to me that you're giving bonuses or performance awards when, in fact, the CBC is performing the poorest it's ever performed. So bonuses keep going up. They keep skyrocketing. But performance, as you say the bonuses are granted based on,
I really, if I may, Madam Chair, I'd like to correct the record. If I may correct the record.
Ms. Tait, my question for you, for 2023, will you be given a bonus?
I would like to correct the record, if I may, Madam Chair. First of all, I don't believe the number was 16 million in last year. I'm going to ask Marco Dubé, who manages the people in culture at our company, to correct the error that the member has stated.
Sorry, Madam Chair, through you, I do have a question on the table, and that is, Ms. Tait, for 2023, will you be given a bonus?
I'm going to come back to your question after he corrects the record.
Madam Chair, I would ask you, through you, Madam Chair, the witness knows that her instructions here are to answer the questions that have been given.
We have 27
She can correct the
seconds.
record by sending in a written notice if she wishes.
You can do that, Ms. Tait. In fact, you've gone over time.
My time has been interrupted numerous times because the witness doesn't want to answer my question. It's very simple. Will she be given a bonus in 2023?
It's not my decision whether I get a bonus or not. Let's just be clear.
Thank you. That's enough time.
I'm sure we can probably agree on some metrics that reasonable people would use to measure the success of a broadcasting corporation. Would you agree that measuring viewership or ratings is a reasonable metric to measure the success of a broadcaster?
Viewership is one metric, so is usership.
Yeah, one metric.
Yeah.
I would say it's an important metric when you're talking about a broadcaster. You said a few minutes ago that ad revenue was I think you used the word, a major driver of whether or not you judge success. So would ad revenue also be a reasonable measure of success for a broadcaster?
It would be one of the variables, yes.
Right, okay. So viewership, yes. Ad revenue, yes. Trust also, whether or not people can trust what they're seeing on TV, especially when you run news outlets. You would agree, I hope, that trust in media would also be a measure of success.
Absolutely.
Okay, and therefore errors would be another measure of success or failure. If there aren't a lot of errors, and that would be a good thing. If there are a lot of errors, that would be a bad thing. Would you agree on that?
Well, I actually would put a different response on error. I think error is a natural part of all journalism, and in the fact that CBC Radio-Canada posts its corrections as quickly as we do is actually a demonstration of why we are trusted, unlike others who may not.
Wow.
So I would say that that's a trusted source.
Wow. So the speed with which you correct your errors is the way that you measure performance at the CBC. Okay. Well, as we've agreed that viewership is an important metric. We've agreed that ad revenue is an important metric, trust as well. So fewer Canadians are watching the CBC than ever before. Viewership has plummeted to half of what it was when you became CEO in 2018. Ad revenue has also crashed. In fact, it was down 31% in just 1 year, 2022 to 2023. And trust in media, and especially in the CBC, has also declined. The NDP talk about misinformation. The CBC has had to issue more than 100 corrections to grave errors in reporting. And that obviously has an impact on trust. So given the fact that on all these important metrics that you've agreed on, what justification do you have to issuing performance awards?
I want to correct a couple of your points, if I may, Madam Chair. First of all, the 30% drop in revenue was between an Olympics year and a non-Olympics year. And in fact, in the years you're describing, we had 2 Olympic Games. And so we have a much higher level of revenue, ad revenue, during those years. So that explains the drop there.
Okay, so were ad revenues in 2023 higher than in 2022?
I would say they were flat.
They're flat, okay.
Yeah, and that is, by the way, very much part of what's going on in the industry. Television is in decline, not just at CBC, at CTV and Global. Television is in decline, and people are moving to streaming, and they're moving to their connected television.
With all due respect, the CBC has almost $500 million in real estate holdings across the country. Big fancy buildings in downtowns across the country. You get over $1 billion in taxpayers' money to be a television broadcaster, radio broadcaster. When those metrics are down, how do you justify giving performance awards to people whose job it is to increase viewership, to increase ad revenue, to increase trust?
Madam Chair, if I may, I don't agree with the premise.
You don't agree that
no, I don't agree with the premise. 79% of Canadians say that it is important for the country to have a public broadcaster like CBC Radio-Canada. 82% say...
Who commissioned that poll?
Those are our public perception surveys that we conduct.
Oh, you conducted, okay.
But
so your polling tells you that Canadians like what you're doing. By using a third-party léger survey firm.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. If the argument is to try to say that we're no longer of value, all I would say is that's not what I hear from Canadians.
What I'm asking about is the bonuses. With all due respect, Ms. Tait, when you give someone a bonus, and we've just agreed on the metrics that should be used to judge a broadcaster, when those metrics are down, how do you justify giving people, executives, big bonuses when they haven't achieved success by these metrics that we've agreed on?
As I pointed out, the metrics that we measure are public and tracked, and they're in all of our reports. So I'm afraid to say that that trust is down across the entire media section, and it also affects politicians. It also affects all of our...
When you misrepresent the truth, it does affect the politicians.
Excuse me, the time is up.